It took the Nigerian government 5 months to reopen the toll gate. And I felt like in reopening the toll gate, we had seen the cycle of what it meant for us to actually fight for effective change in the country, if that makes sense. And we were basically, I guess, erasing the sacrifice of the youth. There's a difference between somebody being a good man and a good leader and having leadership qualities, right? You can be a bad person and have leadership qualities, and be a good man and have bad leadership qualities, right? So at the end of the day, what do we really want? Donald Trump is a man who can polarize a community for or against any cause, right? He understands the intricacies of America, and I don't think Americans see that he uses his whole thing to manipulate them. Hello world, with me, Abraham Sharon. Welcome to, I guess, the first episode of the podcast on YouTube. Today's topic is beginnings because this is like the beginning of like a new phase for me when it comes to the podcast, but also in my life. Um, as I guess a way of announcing, I'm graduating from Plymouth University in the UK. I came to the UK for a second degree, and at the time of this recording, I'm going to be graduating in 2 weeks. So, hooray to me. So yeah, I want to thank everybody who was part of that journey for me. Also, the guys who listened to my podcast during that period. Thank you guys very much. Had a pretty good past year when it came down to people who listened to my podcast while I was in school. I didn't release as much because schoolwork and work, all the work. But yeah, thank you for everyone who listened. I'm very very grateful. So back to beginnings. Do you guys remember, like I already said, the golden age of podcast was audio, and I loved it. Perfect for me. I could hide, but here I am, doing the video version. And in trying to do this, I asked myself, what will my friends think? What will people who know me think now that they're going to be seeing my face and the the way what I wear, probably how I look, kind of hair I keep now, my weight, probably, all these things. And it took me back to the reason why I started this podcast in the first place. I started this in 2020 or 2021. And it was a time in my life where it was not a bad time. My parents were not living with me anymore. I had officially moved on from that. I was working in tech. It was good, but I was still floundering, a young man in the wind, and all those things. Uh, so the podcast was really my way of letting out some of the things I carried around with me. I am the more melancholic type of human. I tend to overthink things a lot of the time, and more morbid things of humanity and whatnot. And the podcast was my way of speaking to people. My best friends in the world at the time were not with me. One of them was, his name is Timmy. Shout out to Timmy, by the way. I think I'll put his picture somewhere on the screen. And yeah, he's a fine boy. So we're accepting applications right now. Yeah, but yeah, so I lived with Timmy at the time. My two other best friends, Peace and Abigail, were not around. And even if you have people with you, you could still feel alone, if that makes sense. You could be in a crowded room, but truly be lonely and alone, which is these are two very different things. So the podcast was my way of talking about the things I wanted to talk about and letting off some steam when it came to the thoughts that were running around in my head and being able to still hide behind my words. But again, here I am. So I thought, in this new age of YouTube or of it being video, I might as well go back to the beginning to look at some of the things that my I guess my mental health at the time, or to look at the things that encompassed my mind, because that's kind of the idea of the podcast. In the hello world, it's me, Abraham Sharon. That's like my whole shtick at the beginning. But yeah, it's about me and the things that I think about, my opinions of the world, which I, if I do say so myself, not to blow my own horn, I have great opinions of the world, but I'm also willing to learn, which is one of the things that I love about the podcast moving forward. I have like episodes slated with guests already scheduled to be on with me, all around the world. There's a girl from Norway who's kind of holding out right now. I don't, maybe if she sees this, she'll be more convinced. There's a girl from Norway, and I found on TikTok who I think will be great on the podcast. And there's some other people from Nigeria, and of course my friends who want to be on. So it's going to be a very great, couple of weeks as I record all these episodes and everything. Anyway, so going back to the beginning, I quickly made a list of my favorite things that I did, talk about on the podcast. What I wrote here, high functioning individual with multiple talents. That was not actually an episode. It was a conversation I had with another. I don't use the word friend like, anyhow. So, I'm about to pull back from calling him a friend, but he checked up on me yesterday, this person out of the blues. And we had a very, in my opinion, profound conversation about being a high functioning individual with multiple talents. He said something that it doesn't matter if he doesn't, get to do all the things his mind conjures up. For example, me having this podcast, there's so many things I want to create and put into the world. And he said he's not scared of putting these things into the world, you know, or not putting them into the world because at some point somebody else will. Humanity's, the consciousness of humanity is like a wave. It's going to always, there's always going to be a crest and fall. And as at the point in his life where he is, where he can be part of, the current wave, he'll put out as much as he can, but he's satisfied with knowing that he might not do all these things, and you know, somebody else might get to do them. And it's a fear that he apparently doesn't have, but it's a fear that I have. Not being able to do all the things I want to do. Ultimately, I guess being a failure. I always tell people this. My biggest fear is ultimately being a failure, like looking back and not being happy with the things and decisions I've made and whatnot. So yeah, the podcast is one of those things for me, a way to put out one of the things that have been going on in my mind, and it's really been on my mind to make this podcast a thing. But yeah, I don't know why I wrote that down to talk about. I can't, but yeah, I think it's worth mentioning though. Anyway, so back to the beginning. One of the very first episodes I did was actually a very emotional one. It was called "The Toll We Paid," a Nigerian story, and it was about the end SARS situation. And for those who are not Nigerians who did not hear about the end SARS situation or killings in Nigeria, the youth protested this government policing body called SARS because they were basically profiling people. Basically, the way I look right now, if I went into the streets in Nigeria at that time, maybe even now, because of my hair, maybe the jewelry, whatnot, they'll say, "Oh, I'm a Yahoo boy, basically a fraudster," and then they'll pick me up, probably throw me in jail until I give them an absurd amount of money. They might beat me up if I put up a fight, stuff like that. And the youth were tired and they decided to protest, and it was really cool protest. It's really one of the more organized things I've seen on a massive scale in Nigeria, and it ended in tragedy. And the reason why I called the episode "The Toll We Paid" was, of course, the major part of this protest was held at this part of Lagos called the toll gate. It literally is a toll road where cars will pass and have to pay a toll to go across, or to go through. So yeah, the toll gate was blocked, that whole place. So the government couldn't obviously collect their tolls anymore, and the youths protested there and paid the toll with their lives because it all ended in death. The government allegedly, for legal reasons, sent in a squad to shoot or not shoot. Nobody knows who sent what. It doesn't matter. Um, but yeah, that was the very first episode I talked about, I guess, which which I guess will tell you the kind of person I am. Very, very sad topic. And I remember talking about the fact that there was something called the cycle of change. It took the Nigerian government 5 months to reopen the toll gate. And I felt like in reopening the toll gate, we had seen the cycle of what it meant for us to actually fight for effective change in the country, if that makes sense. And we were basically, I guess, erasing the sacrifice of the youth, whatever. It was a very emotional topic for me because I was supposed to be actually there on the day the whole massacre thing happened. Maybe I wouldn't have stayed as long, but I wanted to be part of this great thing that was happening. I'm very much for revolutions, and some of my favorite films are about revolutions. I love politics. I love I say I love humanity. I can't be cynic if I want, if if the time is right, but at the base of it all, everything boils down to the fact that I love humanity and humans, and our fight for better. I'm all for that. But since that point, since those series of deaths, there hasn't been anything on that level in the country. It's almost like we've all agreed it's not worth it in the end because you just die, and in 5 months people kind of move forward with their lives like nothing happened. And so even if yes, it is celebrated every time, it was a really sad thing. Yeah, it was. I thought it was good to revisit that. Um, I'm not gonna shy away from stuff like that. Still, I think I've become more confident over the years to even talk about the more big things on the podcast, even if my brother, particularly my youngest brother, has shamed me for being sad and robotic, which is how he'll put it. I'm sad and robotic. But anyway, that was my first episode. Second episode, or one other episode that I really like to talk about right now, was one I called something about Donald Trump. What was it? Um, the man and the something and the man, a Donald Trump story. I was doing a whole thing at the time, trying to make every episode sound cinematic, but it was about Donald Trump and about how why would anyone ever think to pick such a man as their president ever? He did not show the values of a leader. And I talked about how, here's one that I really liked. I talked about how there's a difference between somebody being a good man and a good leader and having leadership qualities, right? You can be a bad person and have leadership qualities, and be a good man, and have bad leadership qualities, right? So at the end of the day, what do we really want? Donald Trump is a man who can polarize a community for or against any cause, right? He understands the intricacies of America, and I don't think America see that he uses his whole thing to manipulate them. So I remember that a man can be good. A good man can be taught how to be a good leader. And at the end of the day, the things he does will show that he's a good man. Donald Trump, on the other hand, in my opinion, is a bad man who, you know, has leadership qualities, but no one he can't unlearn his bad ways, and over time it was going to show. Now, let's talk about which president of the United States has been indicted of federal crimes related to tax and might actually go to prison. Donald Trump. Almost like I predicted the future. He was such a bad choice and he was a bad person. And which is what people, tend to forget in democracies, really. Stop picking polarizing people who you pick them for the wrong reasons, really. People can have good qualities and they're popular. Oh yes. I also remember that I was thinking one time, I didn't mention it to anybody, but I was thinking, just looking at the political landscape, that democracy has just become a battle of popularity and polarization. How popular is this person, and how many people can he get to fight for or against something? And it's such a bad way of looking at the people we want to lead us for the next 4 years. Nigerians, on the other hand, have seen what it means to pick the more popular person, or the person is he's my person because he's from my village or he's from my state, and so I'll pick him without actually looking at the intricacies of the man, right? This is why very cool episode in my opinion. I really liked at the time that I was thinking that, and years later down the line, it did show. Donald Trump is a bad person. If you're an American watching this and somehow you see this before your election, which I think is in November, yes, do not vote him. Should you vote Biden? Mm, he's not exactly a better choice. But again, story for another day. Maybe I'll have a podcast episode on that one. All right, cool. Moving on. Yes, one of my more lighter episodes, maybe. It was something about living an average life. this was the first time I had somebody on the podcast. It was a friend of mine called Timmy. I mentioned him before, right? Of course, we're living in the same house. It was bound to happen. It was a very fun episode. And my parents actually listened to this episode. I think it might have been the first one they listened to. Until today, my mom still references something that was said on that episode. Like when I mean till today, I mean like she talked about it like a few days ago when I was talking to her. Shout out mom and dad. Um, on that episode, we're talking about what it really meant to live today. You know, um, me, I and Timmy are not the clubby, go out to drink or smoke type people. I don't drink or smoke at all. So, that's not even my scene. And sometimes when you're always inside, you could feel like you're not living life. You could feel like you're being left out of, the happenings. I call them the happenings because sometimes when I talk to my girlfriend, it's like, oh, what she gives me the update on the happenings, the goings on in the industry, or on the internet or whatever is happening. And so on that episode, we talk about what it meant to live an average life and also about the financial straits. And this was in 2021. We were already, thinking, oh, the world is so hard. We might never get to the height we want to, but we have conditioned ourselves to live less and to accept that, we might never get to some certain places, but we will be satisfied, with the place we are, where we are, and the heights we might reach or might not reach, but we were satisfied with quote unquote an average life. Anyway, my parents thought, excuse me, it was succinct. They thought it was, yeah, it's not a bad way to think about life. Sharon stays inside. He's very gentle. He's not really, I don't just go out and do whatever. So they thought, yeah, this doesn't seem like an unwise take, right? I don't think it is an unwise take. It is good to manage your life and your lifestyle and all those things. But here's the girlfriend effect. I don't know if people have seen this trend on TikTok called the black girlfriend effect. I think we should talk about the wise girlfriend effect or the motivational girlfriend effect. So I meet this amazing woman called Grace in 2022. And she listens to some of my podcasts, or maybe I mentioned it to her when we were discussing. This is probably before we started dating. When we were probably discussing life and what we would want life to be, I probably referenced to the podcast saying, "Oh, um, I've I've signed myself to the idea that I may never get some of the things I want, but I've learned to live with less. I've learned to be contented, and of course, I will fight for my dreams, but I will not, hope for or kill myself with hope, because as they say, hope is what kills the man. Somehow, over the course of our relationship, thank God she, decided to go out with me even after saying such things. I mean, I don't think any woman wants to be with a man who says things like, I'm content with having less or living with less, even if I think many men at the back of their minds have conditioned themselves to live less so that their family, their wives, and their children have more, which again is another topic for another day. But over time, she has somehow diffused her hope into me. I've absorbed this amount of hope for the future. And not even for me, I just want her to have the best things in the world, to have the choice to do and undo, to not need to work, but to work because there's a purpose there for her to find, not because she has to survive. I want the best of the best things for her. I want her to have choice to do what she wants to do and to say no to things she wants to say no to. And she's a Christian, and also with I had to grow to kind of at that time keep up with her, and because I loved her, um, I did it for her, and at some point I did do it for me because I knew I had to grow for myself. But now I hope for better things every single day. I fight for better things every single day. I cannot be satisfied with less because she deserves more. Does that make sense to anyone? Is it just me that his girlfriend or boyfriend has done that to them, and now life can't just be average. It has to be spectacular so that this person has the best. If the hope is what kills, then I'm ready to die, basically. you know. But yeah, so that episode, the podcast episode where I talked about being able to live with less and live an average life was not a bad idea. But by God, I will not live an average life. That woman deserves better than that. So yeah, love that episode. I still think it's cool if anybody wants to go listen. It's everywhere: Google Podcast, Spotify Podcast, anywhere you listen to podcasts. My episodes are out there. So I'll talk about one last episode. A part of me is left in each episode. A part of me is uh, giving away, or I reveal a new part of me every time I put on a camera and decide to speak in front of people. And I always loved that I could hide behind my voice. Now my face is on, and people can see. I guess you can see the conviction or the fear or the hope or whatever, right? But yeah, so final episode I'd like to talk about was one I called, it was The Menu, the film, if anyone's seen it. It had Anya Taylor-Joy, which is the only person's name I can remember right now, but it had a host of amazing actors. I think Nicholas Hoult, who's going to be the new Lex Luthor for the DC universe, if you're into superheroes. Anyway, it was an amazing film. It was about this bunch of bougie people paying an absurd amount of money to go eat from this special menu from this amazing chef, and they went to an island to go listen. Sorry, I said listen to go eat this guy's food, and not knowing that it was some weird culty thing where he was gonna basically you know kill them all. I don't want to talk about death for you to put up some violation thing, but yeah. Anyway, it was a very really absurdist reality type of thing. But anyway, Anya Taylor Joy's character survives the film because she did not let go. Basically, she did not lose sight of the simple things. At the end of the day, she said the line. She told the chef, "After how many hours of being here, I haven't eaten anything. Can you just, do give me a damn cheeseburger?" She just wanted a cheeseburger, the simplest of things, and he gave her the best cheeseburger she would ever eat. She survives the film. Many people died, whatever. And in that episode, I talked about the fact that as we grow and earn more money, there's something that affluence does where it kind of barricades you from humanity. All the bougie people who were in that film, or the really rich and elite people, had lost touch of what it meant to really eat a meal and to like enjoy the meal. Like one of the people he had, the chef got to eat from his menu, was a woman who actually reviewed food, and people are started to pay her for reviews, or she put her own personal vendetta on how she reviewed people's foods and all of that. But people are just lost sight of what it meant to be human. Their money had changed them fundamentally. And so I reviewed the movie and just put my ideas into the world, some tidbits about not losing sight of the simple things that makes us human, that makes life really worth living. Money does allow you to live with a certain level of comfort, but it also, as seen in that movie, can alienate you from the rest of humanity, because now you live in high walls and have all the private security and the bulletproof cars, and yes, for good reason sometimes. But yeah, even as we search for money, we run the rat race. Do not lose sight of the cheeseburger. That was actually the name of the episode. Do not lose sight of the cheeseburger. Yeah, I remember that. One of my actually my most, I think it's now my second most listened to episode ever. People absolutely love that, so I would continue that. I would use movies to bring out intricate ideas and truths of the world. Love that movie. Many more movies have come out since that time, and yeah, I'm going to review some of them, even if you've seen them before. Maybe you didn't notice the things I'll talk about. But also, I'd introduce you guys to my favorite film in the world. You know, one day, if you guys are good listeners. Sounded weird, but anyway, yeah. I'll introduce you guys to my favorite film in the world. Not the best film in the world, my favorite film in the world. Which I guess beats whatever movie is the best movie in the world. And I have opinions on what the best movie is, but again, another topic. I'll probably have my guys on so we can all battle it out, the battle of the movies or whatever. So yeah, that in a nutshell is what Hello World with me is. If you got to this point, thank you. I talk about me, I talk about God, I talk about life, I talk about politics, I talk about a host of things that encompasses what it means to be human in today's world. and the intricacies and how to find the balance between all these things. That is what this podcast is about, and we're on YouTube now. And as always, like and subscribe. I've always wanted to say that, or I've been looking forward to saying that. Like and subscribe, or leave a like on the channel and subscribe. Don't forget to subscribe. All those things. I'll figure out what my own how I'll say it next time. But it's so nice to say like and subscribe. Yeah. What else? Yes. So on the podcast, one of the final things I used to do, or I will still do, is recommend good music. I always like the music or the song I pick to fit into the idea that I'm passing on in that particular episode. And I was looking for something, something that had to do with beginnings. A lot of songs, talk about beginning or ending things, but none of them really fit until I found, let's see, yes, Coming Home by Leon Bridges. So I thought, the beginning is also could also be seen as the like a resting place. It's like getting into a new home. It's the beginning of a new thing, but it could also be a good resting place. I hope to be on YouTube doing this successfully over the course of years. So it is a coming home. And so if there are no copyright laws, maybe I'll add a snippet, of the song to the end of the episode. But we have come to the end of the episode. And I wrote in my notes, like and subscribe. So, like and subscribe to the channel. And somewhere on the screen, you should see episode 2, the very next episode. And of course, I hope I've kept it under 30 minutes because attention span shrinking every day. But of course, I am Sharon Abraham. Thank you for being here. Thank you for listening. Even if you cut at 5 minutes at some point, every single person who listens, I am grateful. And I will see you guys next time. Bye bye.